So we're live, but the link is not live. Oh, now it says live. Okay, I am showing up here. So we're live, but the link is not live. Yes, the link is live.
Take a look at the viewers.
Hi, everyone. Alan Schimmel of DevOps.com. And we are just waiting for our panelists to join momentarily. See, it looks like we have. Hi, Devin. How are you? We can see and hear. Appreciate you can see and hear me. Just waiting for our panelists to join here. Apologize for the delay. Just bear with us. I wonder, Jules Devin had a suggestion that he was waiting in the lobby, saw nothing, backed out of the lobby, and clicking the video on the page brought up the feed, which is, I guess, the way it's supposed to work.
Yep, that's the way it works.
I apologize, folks. You know what, while we're waiting, Jules, let me address some of the questions we have in here. And again, folks, my name is Alan Schimmel, and I am the editor-in-chief here at DevOps.com. And one of the first questions that I saw was from Forrest Jing, who wanted to set up a DevOps movement in my company, but I don't know where should I start, tools or practice or what. So that's a bit of a chicken and the egg question. The fact of the matter is it's both. However, I think most DevOps experts will tell you that it really does start with culture. It starts with taking a small mission or a small project and instilling a sense of DevOps unanimity, people working together, breaking down silos. It really doesn't make a difference what tools it is that you're using. You could pick any tools that facilitate people working together, but it really is about the people and the practice of people working together, not pointing fingers understanding that there will be hiccups, that there will be changes. But you know what? One of our guests who are due on, Carmen from Nationwide, is actually an expert in that on that topic, and hopefully he'll be joining in shortly.
I just got a message from Rosalind. She's joining in right now. She's trying to join in. Let me send her a.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully we'll be having our guests soon. Guys, I do apologize for this.
Another message from Rosalind. No.
What was the message from Rosalind, Jules?
I don't seem to be able to get in on my account to the link. It keeps takes me to watch it. So I send it again.
Okay, I'm just stepping away for a moment. Where is Sanjeev Sharma?
That should be better.
Hi, Rosalind.
Hi, Rosalind.
Hello there.
Alan, I'm speaking with Stephanie. Stephanie's telling me that she's in the chat with both Sanjeev and Carmen right now.
She's in the chat?
She's saying they're on, but I guess they're on the other side apparently.
Yeah, I think we all got the invite to our non-Gmail accounts, and so it was having trouble getting in.
Okay. Tell Stephanie to please give them the right address, I guess. Rosalind, how are you? I'm sorry.
I'm doing fine. I'm glad to be on now.
Okay. We have a couple of questions from the audience already, and we're just trying to, I guess, get everyone on here to get started with this.
Technology, it can be so much fun.
Yeah.
This is why we all need better processes and tools.
Okay. So, Rob Cuddy, that's a great question, Rob. While we were waiting, imagine if you were talking to someone that was starting this DevOps journey. What is the one thing that you know now that you would tell them that you wish someone would have told you when you were starting? Rosalind, what do you think about that? What would be your answer?
Well, I think one of the biggest things people need to think about is people and process and teams. I've seen a lot of organizations focus on tools first, and it really needs to be the transition of people and making sure you understand as developers and as other parts of the company that you're really working together on the solution.
Agreed. I would tell you my biggest thing is that I think as tech people, we really are tool users, and so we tend to focus way too much on tools. It's all about the tools, and there are a lot of tech people I've dealt with on dev and ops side that say, yeah, that culture stuff, that's nice, but that's all warm and fuzzy. Give me a good tool. And so the one thing I would try to emphasize with people is it's not about the warm and fuzzies, it's real. And there is certainly a cultural element to implementing DevOps that goes beyond tool making abilities. It looks like we have Carmen and Sanjeev here, or at least, yeah, we've got all of Sanjeev's face and just about all of Carmen. Hey guys, better late than never. I appreciate you logging on.
Hey, hello, and Rosalind, how are you guys doing?
Very good. Carmen, you can hear us? Well, you're sitting next to each other. Of course you can hear.
Yeah, we're sharing a computer.
We're good.
Okay. So, guys, we're going to get started. Today's Google Hangout is a little bit of a preview for IBM InterConnect 2015 in Las Vegas next month. And it's a pretty big show. It is taking over a good portion of the Las Vegas Strip, it seems. And we're lucky enough to have today with us three sort of key people who are going to be presenting, I think, multiple times at InterConnect 2015. Let me introduce, first of all, Rosalind, who we've been speaking with. Rosalind, if you wouldn't mind, can you just give name, title, background, let people know who you are?
Sure, I'm Rosalind Radcliffe. I'm a distinguished engineer in the IBM organization, and I'm responsible for our DevOps for enterprise systems solutions, helping make sure our customers can do the transition and help building tools that support that transition.
Very good. And then our Siamese twins coming out of the same scene is Sanjeev Sharma. Sanjeev, if you wouldn't mind Quick background on who you are?
Sure, sure. Thanks, Alan. So my name is Sanjeev Sharma. I'm the worldwide lead for DevOps adoption at IBM. We're working with organizations like Carmen's, helping them adopt DevOps, understand how DevOps applies to what they need for their business. And a lot of the sessions we'll be doing at InterConnect will be focused in that space, and that's going to be my main focus for multiple sessions I'm on, including there's a panel in which all three of us are there. So you'll be getting to hear a lot from us.
Very good.
Hi, I'm
Carmen?
Carmen. Hi, Alan. I'm Carmen DeArdo. I'm a technology director in Nationwide Insurance, and my focus is really on DevOps, continuous delivery, and some of the initiatives that we've been running, working with Sanjeev and Rosalind, and some of the other product lines such as Urban Code in terms of driving continuous delivery capability and two-speed IT, things of that nature. And those are the kind of things that we'll be talking about at the conference.
And we're going to talk a little bit about them today as well. But before we dive right into that, I wanted to ask each of you, look, InterConnect seems to be a large critical mass of DevOps learning and discussion and networking that's going to happen. But can each of you tell me kind of what gets you juiced about or jazzed about InterConnect? What does InterConnect 2015 mean to each of you? Carmen, why don't you go first since you went last?
Okay, so InterConnect, I guess, and this is an opportunity where a lot of the disparate conferences have come together. So in the past, I've been presented, I think, the last 3 Innovate conferences and attended, and I think with InterConnect, you have the opportunity to have more discussion across other technology areas, infrastructure, application development with focus on continuous engineering, DevOps, those kinds of things. I mean, my passion is really around how do we get faster, how are we able to automate a lot of the things that we currently do in a manual way, so we can improve our speed to delivery while improving our quality and really driving more efficiency and effectiveness. So, when you're at InterConnect, you can not only learn a lot of things, going to other presentations, but there's other, in my case, there's IBM folks to talk to directly. There's other customers that you can share information with, so you can understand some of the things they've done. We can share information about what we've done. So it's really a unique opportunity to get a lot of information, a lot of experience, a lot of sharing in a very short period of time, and it's usually a great environment for that. I mean, they're great conferences to learn those kinds of things.
Sure. I mean, just for scale, Carmen, you mentioned Innovate. I'm not privy to all of the numbers, but it seems like InterConnect 2015 will probably be 4 to 5 times the size of Innovate in the amount of attendees and sessions and so forth. So it certainly is it's a bigger stage and a bigger playground to play in. Sanjeev, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think Carmen hit it on the head. I am looking forward to it mainly because of the one place where everybody's collecting, right? Earlier on, IBM used to have the Pulse conference, the Impact conference, the Innovate conference, and unless you went to all 3, you didn't get the whole spectrum of different kinds of customers who were there sharing their success stories, or different parts of IBM who had the development, product management, and the deployment leads coming and sharing the successes they had achieved or the challenges they had helped customers overcome. And here it'll be everybody in one place, right? So there's a maximum. The biggest issue is going to be how do you get to all the sessions you want to, right? I'm thinking of bringing sneakers because there'll be a lot of walking involved from one session to another, and probably from one hotel to another. But that's it. There's a critical mass here. If you just forget everything else and just look at DevOps, this is probably the largest DevOps-focused conference ever held. And let's just not even look at the other cloud and mobile and social and other aspects of IBM which will be represented here. I'm just looking at it from my, from a broader if you look at IBM wide, it's a fairly narrow perspective of DevOps. But from my perspective itself is probably the largest DevOps conference ever held.
Sure. I don't know if sneakers will do it, Sanjeev. We may need roller skates, or if we could get one of those hoverboards from Back to the Future, would be pretty cool.
I saw something, yes, which seemed pretty close to those. So maybe maybe they left a few behind in Las Vegas.
Okay. Rosalind, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I've spent the last number of years going to Impact, Pulse, and Innovate, as well as our Information on Demand conference. So I understand the having to go to all of them to see the different clients, and I find this will be a wonderful opportunity to actually get them all in one place. And so the different people from the different organizations, all at one location at one time, we can really talk about DevOps with Ops and with Dev together. And so we have that opportunity. And bringing the wide variety of people from the different organizations together, it might be the first time that they actually talked together. It will be an opportunity not only for companies, and in some cases for IBMers, to meet other IBMers they've never met, but in companies it'll be an opportunity for groups that don't usually talk to actually talk together, to meet, to discuss, and the variety of sessions that are on. There's an extensive number of sessions on DevOps, and as was mentioned, cloud and mobile, and all of these things will be very helpful to get the information that people need, and it'll be a wonderful opportunity to talk to the clients about what they've learned and how that's going to affect what they're going to do. I'm looking forward to it from another aspect as well. I'm going to be giving a number of sessions, and a number of them with clients, and so it's an opportunity for me to do a session with a client that I've worked with to say what we've done, how we've done things. I'm looking forward to the panel discussion with Carmen and others on what's going on with their DevOps adoption, as well as other parts of DevOps, migrations from a Z standpoint to move to modern development tools, etc. So it's an opportunity to cover the broad spectrum of clients and different technologies.
Absolutely. Guys, before I ask your next question, I just want to let our audience know that we do have all of these questions that you've asked here on the sideline, and I intend to hit every single one of them. I just want to facilitate our discussion a little bit, and then we'll dive into some of these questions as well, because there are some excellent ones there. Still on the theme of InterConnect, though, so I haven't pre-asked you guys this question, so I hope I don't catch you flat-footed, but besides your own sessions, what is the single thing you're most looking forward to watching or learning or seeing in terms of a session at InterConnect? Sanjeev, why don't you go first?
You mean other than Aerosmith? Is it Aerosmith who's coming?
Well, I knew you were going to say Aerosmith because you look like a rocker. But besides Aerosmith.
Yeah, so I'm actually very interested in some of the cloud sessions, and I don't want to name any specific titles here because I'm sure I'll muddle them up from what's actually in the official guide. But I'm very interested in how customers are adopting cloud and changing their application delivery or their service delivery practices and able to innovate faster now that they have the cloud. So I'm very interested in these cloud consumption, cloud adoption patterns, and how that is impacting our customers' ability to innovate. Because I think that's the area which personally interests me the most. So that's what I'll be focused on. Other than the DevOps track, I'll be mostly spending time in the cloud sessions.
Yep, I think the rubber meets the road. Carmen, how about you?
Well, I think one of the things that I'm always fascinated with is any session I'm doing with Watson. I mean, we actually have some work that we're doing partnering to try to better understand how we can take advantage of Watson and some of the analytics. So obviously when you talk about insurance and financials, understanding analytics, understanding how you can better use them, that's an important facet of our business, and so I'm always looking forward to things like that. Obviously, cloud and mobile are big parts of what we're doing with getting more of our applications available for applications and apps and things like that. And also on the infrastructure side, a lot of times I didn't get to go into much detail about how do we delivery also takes into account how we do things better from an infrastructure perspective and how we manage the infrastructure elements of what we're doing. So this kind of conference gives me an opportunity to see some things there that in the past I would have had to go to some of those other conferences to see.
Sure. I'm always fascinated with the Watson stuff as well, Carmen. To me, just the whole artificial intelligence and what it represents. I was reading an article the other day with Ray Kurzweil's predictions for 25 years. He thinks by 2040 we'll be able to upload our entire consciousness to an AI machine. It'll be pretty crazy. Anyway, Rosalind, what about you? I saved you for last.
So I'm most interested in listening to the customer sessions on using our technology. I like to learn and understand their experiences and what they've gone through, especially, I work with a number of clients and I'm doing a number of those sessions, but the clients in the areas that I haven't necessarily been dealing with, I'm interested in learning more about some of the client experiences in deploying hybrid clouds and how they're configuring and setting those up, and how they're getting their DevOps transformations to work with the hybrid clouds to make sure that they can support the environment appropriately. I think hearing the stories from the live customer, the real use cases, helps me understand the different use cases and understand the environment better so that we can do more and provide better function for people,
Absolutely.
For all of our clients.
Great. Okay, guys, I want to transition into another topic, but before I do, I also wanted to mention that in addition to joining in Google Hangout, if anyone's out there, we are crowd chatting this over Twitter as well. And so if you are on Twitter and not on Hangout, you can look for it on there. But Carmen, you mentioned something before called, I think, two-speed IT, you called it. I've heard it referred to as variable speed IT as well. And it's something I think that we want to discuss, and it's something you've spoken about before, Carmen, and in discussing it, maybe we'll even answer some of these questions. First of all, what do we mean when we say two-speed IT or variable speed IT? Carmen, would you like to take a crack?
Sure. So actually, I like the term variable speed IT better, because I think of a car, and who would want to buy a car that only had 2 speeds, right? I mean, you want to be able to have variable speeds and drive as fast as sort of the conditions will allow you to, based on your determination of your need to deliver business value and cost and risk, and balancing those things. So when I think about it, I don't think of sort of a little bit like Agile. I mean, first, when Agile came in, people thought, well, this is like a whole, forget everything we ever learned about software engineering. This is like some new thing. We're going to go, out in the street in a park, and we're going to just write software and throw it, deploy it. I mean, it's not. It's the same thing here with two-speed IT or variable speed IT. It's not. I don't think of it as a totally different methodology or method of doing your delivery, but rather, how do you build a delivery pipeline that allows you to go as fast as the business would like to, by giving them the confidence, the certainty that they can have the information, the data that they need, automate deployment policies, and make their own determination of balance of risk and cost in order to do that. So, when I think of it, it's about building that delivery pipeline with automation, with visibility from the way through your release planning, management, and the other things that would drive your deployment policies and allow certain things, maybe mobile capabilities or certain things to go faster based on their need, while system of record or other things you may want to go at a different pace, but doing that with the same foundational capabilities. I think that's the way I view it, and that's the way I think we're trying to attack it, using some of the rational and urban code tools.
Sure. Rosalind, what about you?
So I think it's important to allow parts of the application to be developed at the speed that they need to. and that we can go as fast as is necessary, and we need the tools and capability to do that. But you may not need to ship things at the same cycle. You may not need to have the same kind of focus. Your distributed environment or your mobile environment really probably does need to move much faster, and hopefully you've defined your back-end systems such that you're providing services, and so you don't need to change them as often. So I think it's very important, and I think I like variable speed IT better than two-speed IT, because I think there are lots of parts to it. There's not just two pieces. There are all the different phases, the different parts of the application, and so being able to go at the speed that's necessary for the part you're working at. And it may be that in some cases the back end is actually faster because it needs to provide a service quickly for something, some data that needs to be there, it needs to be available, and then you can take advantage of it when you're ready with the mobile front end.
Sure. I mean, there's another aspect of it for me as well, and that is when I'll speak to people and they'll say, look, we're not Google, we're not Facebook. You know, we're in finance, we're in insurance, we're old and conservative, and we don't necessarily need to go at that speed. What they really mean is that our entire organization maybe doesn't need to go at that speed, that different parts of the organization can move at different speeds. But I'm hard pressed in this day and age for a company to raise their hand and say we don't want to do more faster. And so I think when we recognize variable speed IT, part of that is the realization and admitting that, look, we don't have to go, everyone doesn't have to go 120 miles an hour. There are some parts that just don't function at that rate. But there are parts that could and should if possible. Sanjeev, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that is very true. At the end of the day, your speed needs to match the speed at which your business can consume what you're delivering. I mean, if your business cannot consume you delivering a new version of the application every month, then don't deliver a new version of the application every month. But conversely, if you look at the DevOps approach of delivering small, delivering often, in order to be able to reduce the risk of delivery, you need to have that ability to deliver small pieces real fast, at least to the non-pre-production environments, right? So the non-production environment, so that you are doing your testing, your integration testing, and getting everything ready, and then release to the customer when either the customer is ready, your business is ready to consume it, or when the slowest part in your complete stack is ready for production. So this whole concept of continuous delivery is not that everything gets delivered directly to the customer like one would do in a Facebook kind of scenario you hear of companies like Etsy do, but it means that everything can be delivered on demand as and when needed, and you deliver it in small pieces to environments where it needs to get to in order to be tested and integrated properly. Then the final release might happen once in a few months, once in 6 months, as needed. So I think that whole definition of what is speed needs to be looked at a bit differently, right? It does not mean that I'm going to build something and every 2 weeks push it out to the customers. You might irritate some customers by doing that, that they have to update it every 2 weeks. And also, as you mentioned, Alan, there might be regulatory requirements, there might be compliance requirements which prevent you from doing that. So there's all these, need for speed and need for compliance which need to be balanced.
Sure. So Rosalind, you spend a lot of your time dealing with systems of records and Z operating systems, and a lot of people don't think of those as the speed demons, and maybe they're the laggards in this. And that's not necessarily the case, obviously, and I've seen plenty of IBM demonstrations around DevOps on the Z systems. But how do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's very important to recognize that there's no reason Z can't be as fast as any other platform. There's nothing inherently slow about doing development for the Z platform. There's just a problem in many shops that the development environment that they're using is the same that I started with 27 years ago when I started in ISPF development. Nothing else in the industry has stayed the same for 27 years. So we really need to modernize the development practices, modernize the development tools, and get people doing modern development practices in that environment. Once you're doing that, then it can move at whatever speed your business needs it to move at. So the slowness we see today is more along the lines of tooling or things getting in the way. The other thing I hear a lot is the requirements around the Z and the systems of record. We've gotten very used to trying to limit change because change causes problems. When you make a change in production, you're more likely to have an issue, so let's just not do many changes. But if we look at the DevOps principles of doing smaller changes more often, then you have tested thoroughly, that you've tested completely, and that you've tested the deployment of completely, then you can reduce risk and still make more changes more often. And so we need to think about all the DevOps principles and the development tooling when it comes to the back-end systems. The systems of record need to change. They need to be able to be changed at the rate and pace required by business. And they can be. There's nothing about them that says they can't be. We just need to get to that kind of practice and those kinds of tools and capabilities.
Absolutely. So let me put a little Goldratt out on you here. You know, when he talks in the goal and he talks about constraints and bottlenecks and so forth, part of it is recognizing that some parts aren't going to go. Some segments aren't going to perform at a given level, and that part of success is, designing your manufacturing IT or whatever it is we're talking about around that fact, so that you have a finely tuned machine rather than everyone racing at different parts. I find this when you go into a big organization who has a small DevOps project, right? That beachhead, if you will. And Sanjeev, this is probably something you deal with a lot, right? You'll go into an organization and they may have picked a sample project or one project that they're going to try to implement DevOps on as a proof of concept, if you will. And how does that one project exist within the larger organization who are operating at different speeds and probably with different kind of principles? What do you think about that?
Sure. So I would like to, first of all, clarify the question a little bit, right? I mean, okay. When we say adopt DevOps, right, I mean, it all boils down to what your definition of DevOps is. To us, IBM, DevOps is a set of practices, right? And you may choose to adopt some of them, which is what we would recommend, rather than adopting all of them all at the same time. And you might have multiple pilots where you're adopting different practices. So that's the first caveat to your question, is that it all depends on what practices are you adopting. Are you adopting continuous delivery? Are you adopting continuous business planning? Are you adopting continuous feedback? Hopefully combinations of some of these in that pilot. And then as that pilot progresses, right, and this is something which extends beyond the pilot and it's moving at a different speed than the rest of the organization, you got to look at three aspects to coordinate them, right? You've got to look at the plan aspect, the isolation during development aspect, and then integration aspect. So let me explain. So first of all, the plan aspect. You've got to plan how that project is going to proceed and when parts of it are going to be ready and when they need to be ready in order to integrate with other components from other projects which might be going at different velocities, when they are going to be ready. So that planning piece, planning your release planning is very essential. The second part is isolating that project during development. Right? So during development and test, it's not dependent upon the availability of other components which might not be ready. Right? And we recommend using techniques like test virtualization in order to do that. So if you utilize other services or other services utilize you, they can utilize stubs. Stubs of those can be available to you for your development and testing purposes. And at the end is integration. Right? Integrate early, integrate often. Right? And don't leave it as a big bang at the end of it when you're ready to release, but do integration on an ongoing basis every time components are available, either using real components or using virtualized components. So those three aspects become very important to the success of this pilot. And not only this pilot in multi-speed environment, to the success of multi-speed IT in general. So I hope that made sense. That would have been easier with a graphic, but hopefully that kind of made sense to how this something moving at a different speed would exist in an environment where other things are not moving at the same speed as it is.
It made perfect sense to me. Carmen, do you have any thoughts on that, or should we maybe move on?
I think, so one element of that, I think, is visibility. So one of the things, I know one of our challenges, we sort of have a hidden factory situation where you have work coming in on one end and you have things being deployed at the other, but to actually see the work as it's being tools in the past we've used, and homegrown tools, spreadsheets, you name it. And so I think one of the keys to be able to manage what Sanjeev described is being able to see have visibility to that. And that's where some of the work that we're doing now with Rational Team Concert and Urban Code is an integration with technologies like TaskTop and things allows us to actually see the work as it progresses, as it's being planned, understand those dependencies, understand the impacts of changes, and also provide data for the deployment policy so that you can replace some of your manual procedures with automation to manage that through the process. If you can't really see what you're doing, it's very hard to manage and improve it. And I think that's a key, to be able to implement any kind of DevOps flow as part of a delivery pipeline.
So, Carmen, I'm going to combine answering a question from the audience here and ask at the same time your own experience around this. How did you start a DevOps movement within Nationwide? Where did you start? Was it tools, practice, some combination of? What would your advice be?
So actually, we started DevOps before we knew we were starting DevOps. Does that make sense? I mean, I think you look at what we did. We really optimized the center of the value stream in the sense that we started with agile teams and agile design, develop, and test, and practices such as visual system management, continuous integration, test-driven development, things of that nature. And we became very good at setting up these standing cross-functional teams, and we changed the model from bringing people to projects to bringing the work to the teams. And so fundamentally, although we, again, weren't really designing it this way, we provided that optimization in terms of the agile design, develop, and test component of the process. I think once we started to work with IBM and we started to think about DevOps and what that meant and thought about our entire value stream, and Sanjeev was out here today helping us do a workshop, we're looking at, so what comes up front, things like the planning component, and how do you start to do continuous planning so that you can continue to keep that flow and that pipeline available, and then the wait states on the back end in terms of deployment. So I think it's, in our case, it was starting with that agile teams, and then it's applying some of the lean principles to look across your value stream and see, okay, we're doing pretty good there. Where else can we start to apply some practices in order to get through some of the bottlenecks and wait states that we have?
Excellent. Sanjeev, you probably have more experience with that scenario and that question than just about anyone on earth. What would your advice be?
I think there's a broad spectrum, as Carmen also suggested, right, of how companies, organizations start adopting DevOps. And in most places where I've been to, it started off quite disorganized, and then it gets organized, right? It starts off as a grassroots effort in pockets with somebody learning about DevOps and trying to solve problems in their own projects and adopting certain practices here and there, and then it growing to an enterprise-wide effort. What we found successful is across almost every customer where we've had enterprise-wide DevOps adoption is the creation of a central team, a center of excellence or center of competency for DevOps, which becomes that source of knowledge and source of expertise for DevOps adoption, which looks at all these pilots or projects adopting DevOps and starts sharing and cross-pollinating the lessons learned. It does not become an additional, organizational part which now you have to approve every change through them. It's not an administrative function there, but they become the place where people go for DevOps information, for figuring out what's working in their company, what are the tools being used, what are the practices being used, who are the experts, where can I learn. They organize lunch and learns, they organize hackathons, they organize, bringing speakers in to share DevOps practices, and in a lot of cases, like the workshop I did here today, they do them themselves, right? Because they develop the expertise to do that, and it grows into a movement from that point. So, very rarely have I seen DevOps start off as a top-down effort where somebody up in the hierarchy said, we are going to adopt DevOps and try to push it downwards. Starts grassroots, then yes, you have to go get sponsorship in order to have it spread with senior executives in the organization and have them recognize the value of investing in adopting DevOps. But they will only do that if they've seen success already in those pockets in their organization.
Sure. Rosalind, let me change the scenario a little bit to you. Sanjeev is clearly saying it comes from, Sanjeev is saying it comes from the bottom up, but, generally the guy on the bottom up doesn't have the authority to call Rosalind Radcliffe or Sanjeev or IBM in to an engagement. Where typically do you get involved in that process?
So it depends. Sometimes it is the bottom up where I'm at a conference or I'm at an event and someone gets an opportunity to talk to me, and so we have a discussion and they want to go from there, and then it does start at that level of somebody trying to understand. A lot of times my discussions, though, are coming in at a higher level and more at many times the mainframe development organization and operations trying to understand how to improve the process. And so they acknowledge the fact that they are as far behind as they are, and they want a way to improve. And so it is coming from, in their case, a top-down approach to improving the overall development process and adopting DevOps in the enterprise system space, the systems of record. In most of those cases, if you look around the company, though, as was mentioned, there's usually some kind of DevOps something going on. There are different trials, there are different activities that have been going on in the distributed space already. And so now this is okay, we've already seen it, we're seeing it in other areas, it's having an effect. Now we want to look at it from an enterprise standpoint, look at it from the overall standpoint, and see what we can do across all of these platforms. There are some times when it's a smallish mainframe shop and it starts from the mainframe development team and there has been no Agile discussion or DevOps discussion anywhere else yet, but that's usually rare.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be. So let me, if I can, let me jump on to a question sent in by Joseph Singer, and this is a good one. How does a large organization implement DevOps effectively when the dev and test teams are globally distributed? They're specialized, that is UI, DB, shared libraries, application code, etc., and each have complex application delivery life cycles. I mean, Carmen, would you say Nationwide kind of fits that, or fits that profile?
Well, actually, we probably don't, because in the sense that we have most of our development done in an in-source model, and most of our teams are co-located. We do have remote. Now, within the United States, we do have 5 different areas of teams. So I back off of that a little bit, and we do have folks in various places: Columbus, Scottsdale, Des Moines, Harleysville. So I think in our case, though, it's still there are cross-functional teams that are responsible for getting the story cards in, taking them through the iterations, and then doing their acceptance testing of whatever those requirements were. There is coordination, obviously, that you can do across teams, so projects can span locations, and you can certainly take advantage of things like rational team concerts so that you can manage your work in an electronic way, so it gives you electronic visual management. Obviously, we use Rational Requirements Composer for the requirements, so having a lot of that electronic and then, again, having visibility with something like Urban Code, I think will allow you to be able to get the same view of the work at the same time across those locations. I do think, one of the challenges to using any tools is you have to have some standardization around your processes. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have different areas have certain customizations to fit their business needs, but a lot of times in our discussions with IBM or other vendors, and we're talking about a tool, we may spend half our time talking about the variance in our own processes. So you really need to get some of the understanding of what standard work is and what manage that variance in your own process, and then start to apply the tools and drive continuous improvement across that. I mean, that's been our experience.
Sure. I think it was at Innovate last year or maybe another conference I was at. Someone spoke about the point of don't underestimate the global and globally. Right? It's one thing to have your team maybe one time zone away, or like here in the U.S. we'll suffer with. But when you're dealing with one team, let's say in India or Australia or in Asia, and the other team in the U.S. and perhaps a third team in Europe, it really becomes a follow the sun operation that I think adds a whole level of complexity. Sanjeev, you've probably dealt with that, I'm sure. What's your take on it?
Absolutely, and we've helped several organizations and worked with several customers of ours who have that kind of a setup where they are spread out over multiple continents. They have people who have very little overlap in their time zones. But the answer is very similar to what Carmen said, is standardization of tools and practices and templates of different artifacts and processes is very important then. Because if you're handing off the same assets as different teams are working on projects, between those teams, and each team is using a different tool or using different processes or different templates, it becomes a mess, right? Because you can't build that visibility between what one team is doing and what another team is doing. Even if they're not working on the same assets, at the end of the day, they have to integrate what they are building, and that confidence that what I am building will work with what somebody over in India or in Germany is building, and we can all integrate it together as desired, and we are all singing from the same hymn book, will only happen if we have the same tools. We are standardized on those with shared repositories, or synchronized repositories at least. We are following the same or similar processes and using the same templates. And that's what we've seen people succeed, and they've added a lot of tremendous value to their ability to deliver by standardizing on tools and practices. And I'm sure Rosalind can share, because we at IBM do the same thing. We are highly distributed globally, and she's a part of that global development team. And I'm sure she can share shed some light on how IBM does it for ourselves.
Rosalind, go ahead.
Yeah, so I like to say that my team, or part of my team, is the poster child for this problem. One of the teams that I work with has people in Australia and China and the west coast of the U.S., east coast U.S., Canada, Paris, Corniche, France, and I'm missing somebody. So so we're all over, literally all over the world. We have people in India. So it's literally, we have no complete overlap. And in this case, I have to say it is tools that does this. Because we all use RTC, we're all working in the same environment, we're working in the same process, we can collaborate. And we truly do collaborate all the way across the world, and it works very well having the different people with the different skills. One of the reasons that this team is as not centrally located as it is we went after skills for particular areas to make sure we had people who had the right skill for the right thing in our product. In particular, I'm talking about the RTC support for Z, and we needed skills in particular areas, and so we found them all across the globe, and we all work together, and the team works very well together by using this common tools. If you expand to the whole rational organization, if you expand to the collaborative lifecycle management products, that team is, we can add a whole bunch more countries and cities and whatever, and we work together through the collaborative tools. IBM has been going through a DevOps transformation ourselves, and we've been doing, well, obviously with Rational Team Concert, Quality Manager, and Requirements, we're managing our processes in a collaborative way, but we're also doing the Urban Code deployment kind of capability to make sure we're deploying on a continuous basis and getting the feedback. When we look at our testing, improving our automated testing, everyone has that problem, and so everyone needs to work together on the automated testing to bring it together. And by having the teams being able to collaborate and work together and have the visibility, we've been able to significantly improve our process and improve our delivery. And we deliver way more often than we'd want to a live hosted version of Jazz.net. So we're running non-GA code all the time to make sure that we're testing it long before we ship it to clients, even though we ship every 3 months virtually to clients. So it's important to get this continuous delivery going so that we can use our own products and improve our processes. And we're on our DevOps transformation, just like lots of other organizations will go, and we won't be done anytime soon, but we continue to improve with every release. We learn from our lessons, we learn from what we did well, and we improve each cycle.
Excellent. And I'm sure we'll be able to find out more about this, Rosalind, at InterConnect, where there's a lot on the plate for that, I've seen. Let me just quickly grab, because we're coming up at the top of the hour. I know we started late. We may have to run over if we can, but I'd like to get to this question. Devin Garrett asked, I'm mainly on the ops side in my organization. Should I wait to turn my infrastructure to code before bringing the devs in? Sanjeev?
No, go for it. I mean, there's value in bringing infrastructure to code before you bring dev in, and in fact, if you've already done it, you can offer capabilities to the dev teams, which might speed up their ability to adopt Agile and DevOps, right? So even without dev being involved, if you start capturing infrastructure as code and versioning your code and managing your infrastructure, there is tremendous value both for you and for the dev teams.
Carmen, do you feel differently or in violent agreement?
No, I feel the same. I think, I mean, if you really look at a lot of the principles, right, it's a lot of the same principles that we've tried to achieve. I mean, code is code, and whether it's code or it's configuration information, I mean, you want to apply the same kind of principles and be able to maintain and version things in the same way. And you don't necessarily have to wait until it's your time to sort of improve the overall process, right? So you're getting ahead of things to try to make sure that as things are going to proceed is always a good step. We're doing things right now from a DevOps perspective, in the development side, even though we know we have work to do on the planning side. We don't want to wait until the customer has all the planning capabilities figured out and then say, oh, well, this is great now. You guys are doing continuous planning. Now give us a couple years and we'll figure out how to do continuous delivery. That wouldn't be fun for anybody. So you always want to get ahead of where the upstream flow is going to be so that you can essentially accept it and you're not overrun by it. So I think the same thing applies in this case.
Absolutely. I thought we might have touched on this, but let me make sure that we answered the question correctly, or at least we directly answered the question, which is, I want to set up a DevOps movement in my company, but I don't know where should I start. Tools or practice or what? Carmen, you would seem like the perfect person for that.
Right. So I think what I said before and about the Agile, and I actually thought about it after I sort of really didn't mention it. You really have to start with some standard practices, right? If you don't have process, no tool in the world is going to be able to meet your goals. Now, it doesn't mean that in the adoption of a tool you can't help. I mean, there's a symbiotic relationship that goes on. So as you have some standard processes defined and you start to implement them in a tool, you're going to find that just that implementation helps you provide more standardization. It'll tell you where you can customize, where it really doesn't make sense, and then will drive continuous improvement across the processes, which will then obviously drive more needs that you have for the tools. So in our case, again, it was around the Agile space. I don't think it necessarily had to be there, but it was around what are those key development practices. We actually went through actually getting a CMM level 3 approval, which I don't think is necessary, but we did it because we wanted to demonstrate that we could actually do Agile in a disciplined way. Because there was this thinking somehow that Agile and discipline didn't go along, or innovation and discipline don't go together, but that's not true. You can do innovation in a disciplined way. You can do Agile, you can do DevOps in a disciplined way, and it has to start with some practices, some concept of standard work, and then utilizing tools to help actually instantiate those practices and then help drive improvements. So in our case, it was around Agile. It could start in a different place. You could start, as we talked before, around infrastructure. You could start even around the planning and the steering component of it. But it needs to be around practices and tools, and then looking from there at what is your whole entire value stream, and where are the opportunities that I have to improve my end-to-end model.
Sure. Okay, we have another question that just popped in here. I want to try to hit it. Rosalind, let me ask you this. In a highly toxic, busy organization, everyone believes DevOps is a way to go, but none of them has stepped up to pilot with the effort. How do we further encourage them?
So to get people working together can be a challenge. To have people understand that they need to collaborate. But if we look at businesses from the standpoint of the value they need to return to the organization, they're going to have to improve the processes. They're going to have to do things. So you have to find the areas that are of most challenge in that organization and get them to cooperate on those. So, for example, I was working with a client who was very dispersed, very siloed, very segmented, but they all had the common problem of capacity. They didn't have the ability to instantiate environments. They couldn't work together because they were arguing over resources. And so providing an environment that allowed them to do deployments better, allowed them to instantiate cloud-based resources, to allow them to do their development, they could start working together in a more friendly manner and then start down the process. And so it gave them a common area, common goal to go after, and so they could bring them together to start this process of collaboration. It usually boils down to finding what's the real business goal that will satisfy all the teams that need to be involved.
Excellent. So guys, go ahead.
Unfortunately, I'm going to say I'm going to need to drop because it's after 4.
I was just going to say that, guys. We're past the top of the hour. Rosalind, just before you drop, at least one of the panels or discussions you're going to be at InterConnect where people can come see you. If you know anything about the title, so we could look it up or anything like that.
So I can't remember the titles of any of my sessions, but it should be easy to find. I think you can search in the tool by name, so you can find me by name. But I know I'm doing a number of BOSS, one on continuous testing So if you look up continuous testing, you'll find that one. I'm doing the customer panel on DevOps and if you look in the enterprise DevOps track, you'll see a number of those sessions.
And I think, Rosalind, we might feature you in a story on DevOps.com in our special section, DevOps at InterConnect 2015 anyway, so we'll ask that question there and get an answer. Thank you so much for joining in, and Rosalind, we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Sanjeev and Carmen, let me put the same to you. If people want to come see you while they're out in Vegas, what is the session, if you had to pick one of the multiple ones you're doing, which one should they come absolutely must attend?
Well, I guess I can give people their choice. It turns out in my case I'm doing 2 on Monday and 2 on Wednesday, and they're both back to back. One is the panel that we talked about with the 3 of us. Then we're also doing a session about 2-speed IT and how DevOps, we believe, can be an enabler for 2-speed, or as we were talking about, variable speed IT. And then we're doing 2 other sessions on Wednesday where we're working on this whole idea of the hidden factory and how do you really expose the hidden factory so that you can make the work that you're doing visible, so that you can manage it. And then a session where we're partnering with Urban Code on our continuous delivery model. So depending on what you're interested in, there's 4 sessions that you can choose from.
Sanjeev, how about yourself?
Right, so I'm on the same panel with Rosalind and Carmen, and then there's also something at InterConnect called Dev at InterConnect, which is very developer focused, so a lot more hands-on, practitioner centric. So I'm doing a session on Monday at that also on how to improve inefficiencies in your delivery pipeline. So that's going to be Monday afternoon at 3:30, and my first session is on Monday during lunch at 12:15. Which is understanding DevOps. So if the people who are attending this hangout, or if they know somebody who is new to DevOps and wants to understand what it is and how to start a DevOps adoption effort, I would say that would be a great session for them to come to. So that's right after the keynotes during the lunch hour on Monday. So I would highly recommend. Once again, as Rosalind said, you can look us up by name and find all the sessions we are doing. I think I have like 6 different sessions I'm involved in. Some of them are panels, some of them I'm doing with other people, both at the main InterConnect conference and also at the Dev at InterConnect.
Sure. So, gentlemen, thank you very much I know you guys were doing a workshop at Nationwide today and took time out of your day and to join us. And we've been on for about an hour. Just really quickly, the gentleman who had asked a question, guys, about the toxic environment, and you heard Rosalind answer him. His follow-on was, I think they know that, but they're just too busy moving fast or going fast. And yes, we're a typical dev and ops organization structure. Any final words of wisdom?
Well, so I mean, I've talked to other customers too, based on our experience, and it is difficult to deliver and transform at the same time, right? I mean, in our case, we did set up within our enterprise CTO organization a capability organization component to focus on practices and tools. I mean, it's not a large organization, but it's something that we put in place that would then allow or enable that transformation and allow us then to do some of the pilots that you need to do to see what worked, what didn't, and how we can improve that to sort of standardize our practices. So, my perspective is, you can start small and try to drive some continuous improvement, but having some investment and capability also can go a long way towards being able to transform your delivery model.
Very good. Okay, guys, I am going to call it a wrap here. Gentlemen, thank you so much again for taking your time. Sanjeev Sharma of IBM, Carmen DeArdo of Nationwide. This is Alan Schimmel of DevOps.com. We hope to see you out in Las Vegas for InterConnect 2015 starting February 22nd, I believe, through the 26th. And you could also learn more about DevOps and what's going to go on at DevOps, at InterConnect regarding DevOps at DevOps.com. Thanks, everyone, for joining in today. And we'll have another Google Hangout February 10th with another great all-star panel of guests around InterConnect. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
Bye.